Hi, everyone. My name is Christian, and I'm part of the marketing team here at Qt. So thank you for being here today, and welcome to today's webinar, Qt Security Considerations, What You Need to Know. Note on today's webinar, it will be recorded, so you can go back and review, or you can share with a colleague who might have missed it. We do have 10 minutes set aside for questions and answers at the very end, so you should see in the Zoom toolbar a Q&A. As we go along in the presentation, feel free to enter in your questions at the end there, and our experts, Martin and James, will try their best to answer those. And there is one poll at midway through the presentation. I'll walk you all through that, but there'll be kind of a pop-up that will come up. It's pretty self-explanatory. But with all that said, the kind of housekeeping out of the way, let's get to the presentation and let our presenters, Martin Larsen and James Beal, introduce themselves. Martin?
Yeah, hi, I'm Martin Larsen. I'm the Director of Product here at Qt. So that means I'm on the product team, mostly doing product management and figuring out what to build next. Security is, of course, a major concern in what we do. So that is my background and why I'm here today.
And hi, I'm James Beal. I work with Martin and the dev team and the rest of the organization. I'm Director of Technical Engagement for North America. And my main job is to work with existing and new clients around the Qt solution. First, it's the protection that we can do. And second, it's great conversations like today, how to run fair and excellent online events. Happy to be here today.
Awesome. Thank you, Martin and James. So just a quick rundown of our agenda today. So you can sort of see it here on the screen itself. We'll start with 5 minutes at just sort of high level, what we're seeing. Martin and James since we work with a wide variety of customers and have some unique insights into what the trends are, what they're seeing with regards to security. Then we'll talk a little bit more concretely about Qt platform, the kind of core security practices and special features that you can use to increase your security. A couple of examples from our customer base about what successful and secure events look like. And then a little bit looking ahead, seeing what are some trends, what's new in security, and again, some time for Q&A. So without further ado, we'll start, and I think Martin is going to begin us off today with some trends about what we've been seeing. Martin?
Yeah, so as you know, we are a SaaS company, and I think that any SaaS company needs to have like a high security focus. Some of the reasons for this are that SaaS companies have a lot of data. Some of that is sensitive and personally identifiable. There's a lot of customers, and they're typically running on the same infrastructure and what is called a multi-tenant system. So that means data isn't really separated physically in databases. It's a shared database. And most importantly, I think that you are the guys that place your critical business needs in our hands. So security needs to be a very high-focused area. I think that being said, Qt has some additional complexity. We often protect high-value or high-demand offers, or high-value and low availability offers. So that could be limited sales or product drops of sneakers or whatever. It could also be NFTs like the Top Shot moments, where they basically drop a bunch of moments that can be purchased at some specific point in time. And there's a lot of demand for that because it's a way to make money. And then we also are securing government funds, such as subsidiaries to various things. So there's a lot of big brands and a lot of love for these brands, and there's also a lot of attention. And amongst people, there's also the ones that wants to exploit that, of course. The other part is that we have a fairly tight integration with our customer systems. So we sort of work together on making a sale successful. And in that way, we also sort of become the first line of defense. So for us, security is really, really important. there are high stakes here and real threats out there. And we see more and more limited sales, product drops, and NFTs and so forth. And those are really optimal condition for what we call bad actors. I think you also see that exploiting system weaknesses is becoming more and more mainstream. And what I mean by that is that like 10 years ago, we were protecting ourselves from professional hackers. Today it's more ordinary people, and that's of course not my mom and dad or anything, but it's people that can buy off-the-shelf product that will give them an advantage over others. And I come with a little bit of a claim here, but basically in these high value and limited supply sales, it's next to impossible to get hold of the best offers if the company selling these offers are not sort of thinking about security upfront. So from a business point of view, you could say, why should I really care much about this? Because my offers get sold out, and why is Security even talking about this in the first place? And I think our sort of mission is that we don't really just want to be a waiting room. We are more than that. We want to help you with traffic management, and we want to make that while bringing fairness to your end users. So, because we are sort of get together on delivering this user experience, security kind of becomes a shared responsibility between you guys and us. And James, I know that you deal with customers all day, and I know that you see like an increasingly concern with this. Maybe you could share some of that.
Well, sure. And part of it is a lot of times customers come to us for two basic reasons. One is they're preparing for some future sale, maybe a Black Friday or a surge they know that's going to happen. And obviously they want to protect their site against the surge, but they also want real customers, their real loyal customers, to be able to get the product. We also have customers who've come to us maybe having had a website issue or a crash or capacity problem. And so when they come to us, the real concern is we want to stay up. We want our site to stay up. And so we have that conversation, we put our technology in and we do our protection part. But then the question kind of comes up, what other benefits are there? Controlling traffic is really just one of three great things Qt can do for a system. We give clients absolute control over the flow of users. We also are transparent. We have tools to message to users, let them know they're in the right place. And lastly, it's about fairness. And so we love having that conversation with clients around selling out is one thing, but how do we get the products in the hands of your loyal customers? How do we get your products in the hands of your fans, the fans of the products that you sell? And we have plenty of features for that. And so I like it when we talk about our solution, not just in terms of the protection it offers, but also the brand benefits to having a secure sale for your fans, and also not inviting the bad actors. If you're too relaxed about security today, you're basically inviting the bad actors in the future to keep coming, and we can help prevent that.
So Qt has been around for 11 years by now, and it's really apparent for us that security needs to be a main pillar in our service. So we actually spend a lot of resources trying to make the system secure and reliable. And the way, from day one, we sort of wanted to make, we did some quite difficult design choices to make it more secure by design. The number one design choice we did back then was to make a decision that we would not be reverse proxy. Basically, a reverse proxy is a piece of a software component that you put in between the user and the application, and then all the traffic flows through that component. So Qt could use that proxy for either showing the waiting room or the target application. And we could host that infrastructure in our own environment, and then just use DNS to route all the traffic through. And there's actually a lot of benefits of using this model. For one, it's very easy to build, and it's very easy to integrate with. So back, our slide is back. That's great. But there's one big concern of that, and that is security. All of that data needs to flow through this proxy, and it needs to be unencrypted in order for us to work with it. So we made that choice that we didn't really want to be able to read all the sensitive data that flows through, like passwords and names and addresses and whatnot. So that's just a security concern that we can't really live with. And it doesn't really, so that the pros doesn't really outweigh the cons of that. So we chose a more simple concept. Basically, we rely on standard HTTP 302 redirects to route the users from your system to ours and back. And in that model, no data is shared with us in any way. That is something that actually is quite unique for us in terms of other systems out there. Finally, of course, we committed to the various legal framework and privacy. I won't speak a lot about that today, but if you're interested in that, feel free to reach out to us. If we look at the more layered security, on the next slide, if we have Christian with us still. Oh, there we go. So in the layered security model, again, I won't speak a lot to it, but this is, of course, something that we are very concerned with. So we have physical security. All of our data and infrastructure is hosted by AWS. So AWS is in charge of that part. So they are certified with a number of certifications like ISO and so forth. We have network security, where we work with private networks and VPN connection firewalls and web application firewalls. We try to segment our network into separate, or sort of service into separate networks that each has a partition of customers on it, so that stuff is nicely separated, although it's a multi-tenant system. And in application security, we also have the concern of this multi-tenant system, where a lot of customers are again, hosted on the same infrastructure and the same databases. So we work with setting up boundaries in the application and making sure that the application is locked down, and even if one of our developers makes a mistake, it won't be possible to access data outside of your own account. On the last layer here, I have included is data security, and of course we work with encryption in transit at rest, and we delete sensitive and personal identifiable data after use. The last point here is the least privilege principle, if I could speak, which basically says that our employees and all of our software components needs to only have the least privilege to do what they are supposed to do in their daily work. Finally, we don't really trust ourselves, so we make sure that we get experts to verify that what we're doing is correct. So we have third parties verifying our solution, and the most useful one, in our opinion, is the bug bounty services out there. So we use BugCrowd, that basically has a number of security testers trying to go around our system and find weaknesses. And we also run automated test suites, like what Trusted Site provides. And then, of course, we have years of experience with these high-profile events that tells us a little bit about how to run this. So with those slides, I just wanted to ensure that we take security seriously. And with that, James, maybe we could dive into some of the security features we have.
Sure. So before we get into some of the, you might say, waiting room specific functionality or some of the things that we can do with the security features in the product, I really wanted to just mention some basic stuff that we all should be doing, kind of some foundational features. It's like kind of waking up in the morning and tying your shoes. So here's some security practices in our system that are supported. Let's just get these out of the way quick, and then we can jump into some of the Qubit specific functionality. So of course, nowadays we need to use multi-factor authentication. We support that. I'll talk about that in a moment. We do have a master account or a main account that's created with users, and you could lock and jail that account so it doesn't become as powerful as it could be. You can watch the changelog, the notifications, and the reports for various activity to make sure it's all what you expect. We have API keys that you can use either to pull our configuration or to do some of our automation, and you can rotate those keys periodically as well as your passwords. And lastly, our system has a configuration file that tells your integration what's protected and what isn't. And that configuration file can be secured end to end with encryption and a secure endpoint. So these are 5 things that we would hope out of the gate we just do, and then get onto some of the fancier things. So I'll explain each one of these. Multi-factor authentication, you can turn it on in your system in the account settings. The problem would be if your passwords get out there or are exposed, and the solution is multi-factor authentication means even a compromised password won't let people into your system because you have to confirm your login with either a code generated by your app or an SMS message. So multi-factor authentication, it's a must-do nowadays. Blocking or jailing the root user, that's kind of an old webmaster term. The idea is when you create an account with us, you get at least 2 users. The first user is like the master user, and it's part of your welcome email. And maybe that welcome email grew legs in the organization. It's a nice, juicy email with lots of good data. And so other people might have that master login information. But we give you 2 accounts. So you should right away create a second user account for your Q administrator, make them an admin. And then your master account, you can make that read-only. Therefore, anybody who saw that welcome email, they could maybe log in and see things, but they couldn't change anything. So it's a good practice to restrict the root user when you can. The next thing about security is, we'd like to think that all security is perfect, but things can happen. And how you discover that is by looking at the available reports, the available metrics, the available analytics. So just a reminder that every account with Qt has a changelog. If you go to your account menu on the left-hand side, changelog, and you can literally see pretty much every action that's performed in the system, even waiting room flow rate changes or messages getting posted or things getting changed. So part of security is knowing what you know and what you can defend, and also knowing what you don't know sometimes and checking the available stats. And the changelog here, as well as our reports and notifications, are 2 ways to keep a handle on what's happening in your system. Definitely good practice to check your changelog. Also, I mentioned rotating APIs, keys, and passwords. With multi-factor authentication, there's a little less pressure to have to update your passwords, but that's a good practice. But with API keys, basically when you create one of these, it's literally a key. It's a key to your system for automation or using an API key to pull the secure configuration, or you can even use the API key to control waiting rooms, flow rates, and things like that. So they're pretty powerful objects. And it's good. First of all, you don't want to put these in your code necessarily. You want to put these in a secure place outside of your code that can be referenced and changed. And then there's a schedule you can set up. It could be every 3 months or something like that, where you rotate your API keys, generate a fresh one, just to make sure that it didn't get out there and isn't being used by any bad actors. And lastly, enabling secure configuration downloading. So our system, when you go into Go and you create your waiting rooms, actions, and triggers, you might know it generates a configuration file, and that file says what is protected, what isn't protected. That you can read that file. It's a JSON file in plain text. However, if you click the box that you see on the screen and make it secure, the file is encrypted at the endpoint. Basically, your integration needs to pull it from our system and save it to your system. If you're doing it securely, it's encrypted at rest and all the way through transit, and then the API key can decrypt it at your system. So if you don't do this, then what you're protecting is available at an endpoint that bad actors can see. But if you click enable secure integration, nobody can see it. And what you're protecting and when your waiting room start and all of that is completely private to you. And this is a great practice right here to make sure you're not giving any signals to bad actors about what you have coming up.
Oh, great. That's some of the basic stuff. You should all go and do that if you haven't already. So before we sort of dive into, so we want to look at how to secure a waiting room now. And before we sort of dive into the details, I'd like to sort of take a little bit of a higher look and talk a little bit about what it means to run secure sale or registration in our belief. So I briefly mentioned that it becomes a shared responsibility, and that's because what we see when we work with companies that are successful at this is that they implement strong security measures throughout the entire pipeline. So in this example here, we're looking at a pipeline from a web shop, and there's something happening prior to the sale. So there's something about how are accounts created, how are they vetted. Can you actually maybe require users to add a credit card up front so we know that this account there's actually a credit card behind it? Do we have phone validation? Do we, do they have purchased before? Can we sort of somehow assess whether the account is actually a good actor or a bad actor? And also, I mean, stuff like account takeover. And also, do you have sort of the right infrastructure in place to actually collect data about what happens during the sale that you can then afterwards use as to analyze and look for fraud? So after the sale, can we just go back one time again? After the sale, you have to look for credit card fraud, for instance, or analyze the data to detect anomalies and canceling orders when needed. All of that is pretty much on you. I mean, this is not where we can help, but we do come with advice, of course. What we can do is sort of the in-between stuff during the sale and registration. There's a lot of features that we have and that you can use to make the sale run smooth and secure. So let's try and dive into that. First of all, if you're integrating with us, you're using a connector of some kind. Currently, we have more than 25 different connectors, which will allow you to integrate with almost any application out there. Some of them are server-side, some of them are on edge, and we have a client-side connector and JavaScript as well. The client-side connector is running in the browser. This will never be secure. It's very convenient to use for some customers that don't require a high level of security. But as soon as you sort of go and want to increase your security a little bit, you should either use a server-side connector or an edge connector. And what they basically does is that they ensure that the users that you get on your website have all been through the waiting room, and no one has cheated around it. The edge connectors, they are pretty new, and they're exploiting this new technology that you have edge computing on the major CDN connectors. That includes Akamai and Cloudflare and CloudFront and soon to come Fastly as well. And these edge connectors, they are really interesting because they're easy to implement, just like the reverse proxy model is, but they have the security of the redirect model that we have adopted here at Curate. So if you're running a client-side or even a server-side connector, maybe you should consider looking at the edge connectors we have. Basically, let me just explain the redirect model that we utilize. So You can see at the top flow diagram here that the visitor will go to your website. And the first thing that happens is that we redirect the user to the waiting room. That could be like q.ticketing.com, for instance, or we do provide some built-in domains as well. And then the second redirect is redirecting back to your target application when the user is through the line. And each time this is happening with 302s, just standard HTTP redirects. The security point here is that it is pretty necessary to restrict where users are going. So first of all, in the first redirect, we're sending the user to the waiting room. And maybe you have a custom domain that you're using for this waiting room with your own branding. And in that case, we require you to actually register these domains in our UI and to have a certificate issued. By issuing a certificate, of course, your users will be using a secure connection, but it also guarantees us that you are actually the owner of that domain. And by registering, it also means that no other customer can use the same domain in this multi-tenant system that we have. Then once the user is through the waiting room, we need to send them back to you, and we need to know exactly where to send them to. So that's the second redirect. And for this, the target URL needs to be approved by us for use through this UI as well. That used to be optional. We're actually making it required going forward. I don't think it's in production yet, but it will be. We will also come up with a new connector version where this is actually built in, so you don't have to register it in the UI, but it will just be working out of the box. But this is basically to avoid users being sent to a phishing site afterwards. We ensure that they actually end up in the right place. So with that, we are kind of in a pretty good spot. I mean, we have secured the user journey around the waiting room. We ensured that the domain of the waiting room cannot be reused. But there's more we can do to improve the journey. First thing we should look at here is the cancel functionality we have. So when a visitor has been through the waiting room and is ready to be redirected back to the target, we actually allow the visitor to do this a few times. And this is to give the visitor, an additional chance in case something goes wrong. You could imagine like I'm in the waiting room, I've been waiting for 30 minutes, and then I go to the web shop, I start actually putting stuff into the cart, and then I have a power outage or something, or I close my browser or whatever. Then I might find my way back to the waiting room, and what we do is that we say, okay, we know you. You were here just earlier, so we let you through straight away, and you can complete your shopping experience or transaction. The problem here is, of course, that if the user has actually completed the purchase, we don't really want the user to have another shot, typically, at least. You want to restrict the users to only buy once, and if they want to buy again, then they need to go back into the waiting room. And with the cancel action here, we ensure that the queue number that the visitor has been given is no longer usable. There's a couple of ways to set this up. The basic one is just to use triggers and actions inside the UI. You can see that at the screenshot below here on the third line. There's just a cancel action, and this will then magically happen. You can also use the API if you sort of prefer a more system-to-system integration. So advice number 4 on the next slide here is a little bit related to the cancel action. But this is the case where the visitor has been through the waiting room, if we take a look at the first flow here on top, go shop at the website, check out, and complete the purchase. Now, imagine that you are a ticketing site and you only allow 8 tickets per sale or per customer. Then in this case here, you don't want the user to be able to just sign in with a different customer account and do another checkout. You actually want the user to go back into the waiting room, wait again, and then complete the checkout if there's still inventory in stock. So that's the second line here. And our past suggestion to this problem has been to do some custom coding where you sort of keep track of the queue number that is used to place the order, and then bind that queue number to only allow one order per user or per ticket or whatever it is. So the connector will provide you with the details needed to implement this, and it's pretty straightforward to do, but it does require a development effort. We're currently looking into how to provide this functionality sort of out of the box without any coding needed, and I hope you'll stay tuned for that, because that's definitely something that is interesting to most of you. Yeah, and we do see a lot of bots in these high value events that we're running. I'm not going to do a lot of talk on this one because it's a little bit out of scope, although similar, and we actually have another webinar on that is recorded that you can go and view, and you can see all of our features in there. We also have blog posts on it, so I suggest you go and see some information about that. So advice number 6. Most of us have applications that are a little bit more complex now than they were a few years back. So it's really important that you secure your AJAX API endpoints. In these SPA, single-page applications, or in other front-end architectures that use AJAX endpoints, we have an issue when we only secure the pages on the page load page, like the HTML that is returned, because the transaction can actually occur without loading the HTTP the HTML from the page, and just by going through the AJAX endpoints. So just posting to add to cart and checkout would do the same. So I could create a bot that did that, or a piece of a small script that did it. And if those endpoints are not secured, then I would be able to grab all the inventory before anyone actually gets out of the waiting room. So really important to actually add protection or security on these two endpoints, or whatever AJAX endpoints that you have. It's fairly straightforward to set up, actually, but there are a few perks in there, so I suggest that you reach out to support and we'll help you set that up for you. Sorry. Okay, so far we've secured the integration between the waiting room and your transactional system, and we put measures in place to restrict multiple transactions within the same with the same queue number. So the only part we're sort of missing here is that to also restrict who actually gets into the waiting room. So imagine that you have some loyal customers, or at least a set of customers that you would like to provide this offering for. It could be a loyalty program, for instance. Now you want to make sure that they are the only one who can get the offer, and you also want to make sure that these are the only ones who can enter the waiting room. So we support this option using a securely signed token, which we call Q token. And basically, there's a few ways to use this. I have brought two here today. And one is an example where these tokens are distributed, individual tokens are distributed to users through emails. So upfront from the sale, you send out an email saying the sale will start at this time. Here is the link to the waiting room, and the waiting room, or that link will include that Q token. Then visitors follow the link, and Qt will verify the signature, and if it's valid, the user is allowed to enter the waiting room, and we can optionally secure that user will only get one spot in the waiting room. And then once the user is through the waiting room, the customer can verify that visitor session as well. The other sort of use case that I brought here is that it's a more real-time use case. So visitors will enter your application and maybe sign in with their account. And once you redirect visitors to the waiting room, that includes the token, which is now time bound, so it can only be used for like 3 minutes or something like that. And this sort of creates a little bit more secure flow than the other, but of course it's based on the use case for this. I don't think I want to go into more details on this because I know that James already has some interesting cases he wants to tell us. So I just want to quickly go to the next and final point here. And that is that you should use our reporting features to dive into the numbers. They actually do tell a lot about the kind of traffic you're seeing on your website. I brought two graphs here. The top left graph shows the queue inflow of a waiting room from a major brand where we didn't really have sufficient security in place. And you can see here that there's like a decent inflow in the first couple of minutes, and then it spikes to 1 million new queue numbers in a single minute. And it goes steadily down there from there, right? But there's no way this can be real user behavior. This is definitely bad actors in play. So the graph beneath that shows the next waiting room they were running, where we put some security measures in place. And there's two graphs here, and this is from a proof of work feature, which is one of the bottom abuse features. And we can see the difference between these two graphs here is actually fairly simple bad actors, could be small scripts or similar, that fail to go through that challenge that we put up for them. So these graphs can be very useful to try and spot behavior that looks weird, and we can definitely help you with that. We have a lot of experience in doing that. And we actually want to help you even more. So currently we have a project that we refer to as the Insights project. And the purpose of the Insights project is to provide you with even more information about your traffic flows, both the flow that goes through the waiting room, but also what goes through your own systems. So that's the sort of mock-up that we have here on the right. I think that's going to be really interesting to see going forward. So stay tuned on information about that. And then, Christian, if you're with us, I know that you have something prepared for us.
Okay, so there should be a poll in progress. Apologies for the technical issues there. But Martin has just gone over some features there, and we're curious to get your feedback to, kind of help us shape the future of where we focus on the product. So which security areas would you like Qt to focus more on moving forward?
So we have the three options there along with an other. If you put other, feel free to write what in the chat. We'll give everyone about another 10 seconds or so to respond there. But it looks like at the moment, the clear winner is waiting room security. So just a quick mention there that for that other bot and abuse webinar, I definitely would highly recommend that. It's also on our YouTube channel. And we also have a couple votes here for identity and access management. So thank you all for your input there and helping kind of direct where Qt is going in the future. And with that, let's move along to James to take us through what a successful and secure sale looks like.
Well, hi. Well, thanks, Christian. So we've talked at high level about some features of the system, and I just wanted to emphasize we're available to have these conversations with customers. We really love it. So get in touch with us. You can email us at support@qit.com in case you just want to chat about your situation. So as mentioned, our first goal is to get in and to protect infrastructure. So we put in maybe our edge server-side connector, get the waiting room in place. Now we know that the site is protected and you can have a great event. So once the site is protected and we know that the venue is there, what happens is we start to see data. We start to see the inflow into your waiting room. We see the outflow. We have some reports. We start noticing bots. We start noticing automation. And so getting that first event to happen really opens up maybe some new conversations. And it really provides the opportunity for us to add more value, you could say, or to provide more benefits to the situation. For example, maybe we can look at where your triggers and actions are to know that people can be in the waiting room, but also continue to browse your website. That's a cool thing to do, and we can do that securely with you as long as the cart functionality is protected. We can turn on and utilize different bot features and the abuse features that we've talked about. We also know that we can kind of do some randomization in the pre-queue, so anybody who arrives can get an equal chance to the front of the line. That's an example of making it harder for the bad actors to steal all the front positions in a waiting room. We can also guarantee that people are served in the order they arrive. That's one of the cool features of a waiting room, and so that's a great fairness tool. And then we have fancy things that we can do. I'll call them fancy, some more advanced things, like people can only get into the waiting room if they have a certain key or a certain token that's generated or a certain unique piece of information. And when we do things like that, we can really start guaranteeing that individual customers and loyal customers are getting through the process, and the noise that's generated by bots and some of that isn't impacting the fairness of your sale. And so, again, we'd love to chat with you about this. We've had hundreds of cases where we've done these various tools, but let's just jump into one right now, and I'll explain one case study on how they did it.
James, are you seeing the Coca slide?
Yep, it just popped up. I know your Wi-Fi is slowing things down a little bit today.
Yeah,
yep, I see it right now. Okay, so Qt's a global company. We have examples all around the world, and Site Coca, it's a European online retailer. And what they do is they do kind of a deal-a-day model, and it's a huge discount. And so each day or each sale, there could be an event that runs. And these are exclusive offers. They're high demand. People love them. And so the bottom line, the first thing that we would do is protect the site against the surge of traffic. The basic waiting room functionality is, yep, we're going to make sure that you stay up no matter what the turnout is for your great sale today. And then when people arrive before the event, we know that we have our pre-queue functionality, which is anybody who arrives before the event starts during that little pre-queue window that you can set 30 minutes, 60 minutes. They all get randomized and put into the event in a fair order. So everybody has an equal chance to get to the front of the line to get the offer. And then also they're using a technique where we're making sure that they know who the people are that are flowing through the queue. And we can, again, talk more about that if you'd like to get in touch with us. But they're basically making sure that people who get into the queue are known people. And so how does Coca secure their events at a high level? First of all, they're using our server-side integration, which we know can't be easily skipped. They're putting us on their server and in their apps, so no matter how end users are getting into the system, we have protections in both places. And then we're using our bot protection and a feature we have called NQ token. An NQ token is a unique identifier that is generated before somebody goes into the waiting room. It's an extra piece of code that our clients can implement. And when people leave the waiting room, your website can check that it's the same token for the same user. They haven't played games by changing accounts. They haven't switched logins. It's still the same user who left the waiting room as entered the waiting room. And when you start doing features like this, you get really great protection. Not only, and part of it is, do we care that 1 million bots showed up if we can still identify the customers inside that noise? No, the idea of the noise that bots can generate is less significant when you can actually pull real users out of that and float them all the way through and into placing an order on your system. So we call that it's our secure connector and our NQ token model. We'd love to chat with you about that if it's a possibility, but it really is the direction that securing online sales should be going. Really making sure that you have the identity of the user in mind as they flow through your whole site. And so, yeah, Christian, we can go through those animations if you'd like. So some things that users were doing, they were opening up multiple browser tabs, thinking that that would get them a better spot in line. With NQ token, we make that much more difficult. And then obviously the bad actors and bots are trying to bypass the waiting room, and the secure connector was preventing that. So a really great way for them to run their on sales, and I know they're really happy. And I believe Christian is showing that we have a link when we share this information. There is a link about this and Coca talking about their experience implementing us. We can go to the next slide here. So let's just say you came to us and you did a variety of things. Maybe you're in ticketing. Maybe you're in online retail. Maybe it's a government service that's distributing economic benefits. Maybe you're a bank. You all have different kind of security concerns. And we're seeing more of these financial services sites come in right now as well, even with like COVID and the idea of people applying for benefits online. But when there's money involved, when there's an investment product involved, when there's something that's almost like a market security, we can help our clients go to the next level to protect the sale. And we're seeing more nowadays with cryptocurrency or NFT, non-fungible token type sales. And the reality is with these types of financial related products, you really need to know the identity of the people that are on your site. You have to maybe do some reporting to the IRS or the government about it. And it's called a know your customer policy. And so the idea, and retailers could benefit from the same thinking. Did we allow one person to create one account, or are we letting one person create 100 accounts? Well, with these financial services, you really can't let people create multiple accounts in the system. And so in this case, when a customer comes to us with this model, the first thing that we're going to do, we're going to protect the website. We're going to get a server-side connector in place and make sure that the line is unskippable and that we're seeing every request that's going through the website. The next thing that we can do is it includes using our NQ token connector. And so we will talk to the customer and say, when do you know exactly who the person is? It's typically after they sign in. So someone goes to your website, they sign in. Now we know exactly who the customer is. And then we can do the next point, which is we can generate a unique token, a unique piece of data that can identify that user through the entire waiting room journey. Again, we call that our NQ token approach. It's a little bit of code that our customers will write. And once we create that token, we can check that user for the entire duration of their journey afterwards. It can be after they leave the waiting room, before they add something to their cart, before they post an order. You have the ability to make sure that it's the same person the entire time. And so once after that, and this is something that comes from the Coca case as well, is we give you lots of data. Once your sale is finished, that first successful sale, you can look at the analytics, you can look at the reports. Our reports are available in the Go platform, or maybe you're using our API to pull some stats and pull some reports. But we give you, and even Martin showed it about 10 minutes ago, the charts that you can see of attempts by bad actors. How are they trying to get in? Are they trying to pretend that they're a good bot? How are these folks getting in? So I guess I would say security is one part what we can do today, and then it's one part watching the information, watching the data, and reacting to get the next sale to continue running really well. Because bad actors, frankly, they don't stop. They keep trying new things.
On this one here, but we just wanted to share a little bit about what's new and our future, or sort of the direction that we're going. So the recently released features is that, or security changes is that we have discontinued the non-SSL use. So everybody needs to, all waiting rooms are running securely now on SSL. We have the domain registration that I spoke about earlier, which is now a requirement, and as well as the target URL protection. So those are really, really important pieces that if you haven't looked into them yet, it's probably time to do it. We will also come up with a blog post, I know, on the domain registration and target URL, so that stay tuned for that. If we take a look at what is sort of future trends, you could say, we do see a movement towards edge computing. So using the edge connectors is definitely something you should consider, especially if you're on a client-side connector, but also even though if you're on the server-side ones. So that's something to look into if you haven't done that already. And then in general, we want to help you achieve the security with more and more default settings that have security built in by default. And our support teams and customer success teams are ready to help you with this as well. And then we see this trend here, and it's something that has been going on since COVID started. We see more and more of these high value events with unlimited offers, product drops, etc. This is definitely some change that has been in the market, and more companies are looking into doing something similar. What we also see is that if you sort of don't have the security in place there, you'll probably be surprised by the amount of bad actors that you'll see. That's at least our experience. And we'll stay committed to providing fairness throughout the internet and throughout our implementations. I don't know if you have anything to add on that, James? Or?
Well, no, I think we have one question, which something you just mentioned, but I just want to say, like you say, we're seeing, and especially in the last year, more activity from both the bad actors and the bots. We're actually seeing, a lot of pressure from regular end users with COVID and some of the different reasons that they're online. It seems like it's not just the realm of bad actors anymore to try to get around the queue. Even good users are looking for a little bit of a leg up, and so our fairness tools and the different things that we can do, I think it's the right posture to have. You basically want to say, we want to run fair events for everybody, and we're not going to be a target, is how I look at it. We had a major shoe retailer a few weeks ago. They had 800 million bot requests in about an hour, and that's far more than the good folk, the humans, can do. So the idea of the power and the ease that these bad actors can do things, it just means that we have to do a little extra to guarantee that the humans, the real people, can get through. So I'm a big believer in this, and we love having this talk with you. But Martin, one question that came in from the audience was from Patrick. They're already on a server-side connector in their application stack, and they're considering going to CloudFront or more of an edge-style connector. Would you recommend doing that, and why?
Yeah, it's really an individual case, I would say, and depending on the use case. But the edge connector is, you get the benefit of separating our connector from your code. So if you're running a Ruby on Rails, you have our library, SDK, embedded into your application. And it's sort of it's merged into your business code somehow. If we instead take that and put it on the edge, then you get a much more clean application, and you get it sort of separated from each other, which I think is a huge advantage on that one. And then probably as we go along, we'll see that that these edge connectors are getting more and more popular. and more used. So I also suspect that those are the ones that will get the updates first. So any security update we do, for instance, is probably going to be pushed out on its connectors first, and then put on all the other SDKs afterwards, because there is quite a lot of them, and we cannot release them all at once. So we will probably go with the Edge ones first. So there are some subtle, subtle reasons why you should use an Edge connector over a server side. Right now, from a security point of view, they pretty much do the same, though. I don't know if you have something, James.
No, I think that's fair. When we have a brand new client coming to us and they need to hurry and they don't want to touch their code, we can get an Edge connector in place the same day, typically, without any code changes. And then it's a question of testing it and how do you get it in place. Whereas if a client says they want to do something in their .NET application stack or something like that, we just know there's going to be a little more time involved and a little more change management that they have to do with the testing and getting the code in place. And so we're seeing very large companies come to us on a Monday and say they need to protect a sale, and by Wednesday they're playing with the Edge connector in their staging environment. So I love the speed, and I also like with Amazon in specific how the CloudFront connector lives alongside the WAF and the Web Application Firewall, so you can kind of have some associated functionality there that works along with our connector. Could be some bot stuff. So I'm a huge fan of Edge. I like everything that we do, but I'm a huge fan of Edge with how easy it is to put it in place and test it out.
Yep, there's another question there from Bill. The monitor page that was displayed for watching for bad actors, is that available to customers or is it a work in progress? It is a work in progress right now. We will probably soonish start making it available for limited customers. So if you're interested in looking at this and you have a use case where you think it's usable, then just reach out to us and we can discuss how to proceed.
And I might have one question for you, Martin. I don't want to throw too much of a curveball over to you. How do we work with bot tools best, would you say? Like if a company already has a bot provider, where do they stop and where do we begin?
Yeah, so James, you're the one that typically is involved with this, right? But we do work with different companies that have existing bot prevention tools like Perimeter X, like that we did the joint webinar with. So again, it's a case by case basis, I think, but we do have patterns in place to actually integrate their services into ours. Would you say that's correct?
Yep, I think it's definitely case by case. And if they have an existing bot manager, we love it. We can work alongside that. If they have nothing in place yet for bot defense, I think we come in with a really strong set of tools to at least protect the site and work on the fairness side. So whether you have a bot manager in place or not, still have that conversation with us because we can work really well with it and also bring more to the game. I think we really bring some cool things to the game.
All right, well, I think that's all we have time for today. We're at a couple minutes over here, but there were some great questions in there submitted by the audience, so thank you for those. And just as a plug, if you'd like to learn more, we have a new customer success team, or relatively new, and so you should have a customer success manager, which you can reach out to at the email there. And as a note, we'll be sending out the recording in the next couple days. So if you want to go back and rewatch a certain section that's relevant to you or want to share with a colleague, you can feel free to do so. So thank you again to Martin and James, our presenters, and have a fantastic day, everyone.